Hi there, in this episode we're going to look at how the media, individuals, and interest groups monitor and influence the government. So we have these three different groups. The media, we're talking about the press, we're talking about the internet, we're talking about television. Next up is the interest groups. These are special interest groups, groups that have a certain political policy that they want to see promoted, such as the NRA, the National Rifle Association, or perhaps the NEA, the National Education Association. So those are interest groups trying to influence government. And then last up, we have individuals, just like you and me. So let's start off by talking about the media. The media use their freedom of the press that's guaranteed by the First Amendment to monitor and influence the government. You're well aware of the nightly news. They publish stories about government officials in newspapers, online. They broadcast information through television and radio. And everybody here in this nation, at one point or another, is exposed to the media and their messages regarding our government. Now, this media influence is really powerful. A prime example of that is 1974. The Washington Post ran a series of articles that led to what was called the Watergate scandal. Members of Richard Nixon's administration, the president at the time, had basically approved a break-in at what was called the Watergate building. It was a high-rise outside of Washington, D.C., and the whole point was to spy on the Democratic National Committee, basically the Democratic Party, to see what their plans were for the upcoming election. As a result of all these articles and all this media attention to it, the House of Representatives started to move towards to impeach Richard Nixon as president. He steps down before Congress can take that action. Next up, we have interest groups. Interest groups raise money and contribute it to candidates. They work with their members to communicate with the government, basically through lobbying, and try to educate their members and the public on key group positions. Interest groups can be very controversial in our country because they do hold a lot of power. The millions and millions and millions of dollars that it costs to run for president, a lot of that money comes from special interest groups. And with it, unfortunately, comes strings. Congress passed in 1971 the Federal Election Campaign Act, which required the candidates to disclose or tell where their money was coming from. In 2010, though, Supreme Court ruled in Citizens United that under the First Amendment, corporations funding independent political broadcasts in a candidate's election cannot be limited. So basically, a company can spend as much money as it wants to support a candidate one way or another. They can't physically give that money to the candidate, but they can spend as much as they want on the advertising. And then lastly, we have the importance of individuals. In our democracy, individuals can monitor and check the power of the government in several different ways. The most important of these, of course, is through voting. By choosing your candidate, you influence directly the government. You can also attend civic meetings. Civic meetings are helpful to individuals because you can be well informed about what's happening and speak out at these civic meetings. Next up is petition the government. The petition is protected by your First Amendment rights, and the fact that you have multiple signatures, sometimes hundreds of thousands, shows the government that many citizens support that request. And then lastly, you can always run for office. Any U.S. citizen may run for public office as long as you meet the eligibility requirements. Okay, that's it for this time.